And
welcome to episode 58, again, of the Civil War Breakfast Club podcast, joined as always by Mary, a woman who is desperately looking for a living, foul-mouthed teddy bear to drink beer with. Then there's Weeks. Hey, how are you?
I was wondering if you'd reference that movie, which I finally watched last night for the first time. Ted, that was such a good movie.
Talk about your spirit animal. Holy moly.
That is my spirit animal completely. Wow. Oh my God.
Anyway, so what's happening? What's good? It's good to be talking just us again. It was a great time we had last week with our friends Bo and Joe. And it's back to us. It's kind of like the parents are gone and we get to whole run of the house again.
Exactly. I can drop F-bombs again left, right, and center.
I know. I was very proud of how restrained you were. It was so funny. It was watching you not quite be able to get it out. So that was pretty good. Good job.
Well, it's kind of like how I have to be at work at the DQ with the kids, right? You know.
Well, you got to set a good example, especially on the Blizzard
I can't
machine.
Be saying like, don't make blizzards that way, fucker.
I suppose you could, Anyways, so good to see you. We had a great time last week. We talked about with Joe and Bo from
Homebrew history.
From Homebrew history. Sorry. Was it history homebrew history as we work on that fundraiser for the good folks over at BUFT, the Bank Franklin Trust. So if you haven't donated money yet, why? You still have time. There's a great opportunity to help them put some money away to help save them, preserve, and recalibrate their battlefield. So that is a good thing. We got a lot of fun stuff planned this week, Mary. Tomorrow night, as we record this on Tuesday, tomorrow night we have our book club, our third book club. Dr. Kate Larson is going to be joining us, talk about her book, Assassin's Accomplice.
And I'm sure it'll have been a good time because by the time this episode drops, we'll have had the book club.
And we'll definitely talk about that. Hopefully she doesn't leave any details hanging, as they say, as we go off to talk about that. So that'll be a good time. But until then, we are going to stay out west. And we're going to continue our traveling road show in the battle of the areas of around Mississippi. We're going to talk about the Second Battle of Corinth, which took place on the 3rd and 4th of October, 1862. So it's going to be a fun battle we're going to talk about after we take care of business.
Yes, and the business is.
And you
look at me. I'm going to be the polite lady tonight and ask you what you're drinking.
Oh, wow. Well, I am drinking from the Great Treehouse, the best beer in the planet. It is called September Sun, because this is the last end of September, and that's the way it's called. And I'm drinking it out of our fantastic mug, Ride with the Winner, from John LaRoe, who also, Mary, you may not have known this, but they donated these fantastic Charles Tilden t-shirts.
Oh, you mean the Charles Tilden t-shirt I'm wearing right now too?
We're both wearing twinsies and a stalker. Yep. But anyway, he created this t-shirt because of our affinity for Charles Tilden, who are helping to try to get the Medal of Honor for still, believe it or not, that's still ongoing. Yep. And these are available on his page on Redbubble. I said it right this time.
Yep.
For the children out there.
Red too.
So go out there and check him out. He has a lot of cool stuff to sell too. I think he even has an Oliver Otis Howard t-shirt that he made specifically for you.
He does. And the cool thing is you don't just have to get this design or the Oliver Otis Howard design or the Ride with the Winner mug design that we both have mugs from him too with the Ride with the Winner on it. You can get it on whatever, I think he said there's 20 some different products that you could get it on. So if you want it on a mug, and I think there's I saw a hat and stuff when I was checking out the store earlier. So there's different things that you can get it on. And anyway, just to segue back into our, so thank you to him for giving us these t-shirts. They're very, very cool. We are both very much Team Tilden. So it's really cool to have a Tilden t-shirt. And we know a few other people that also like Charles Tilden as much as we do. But anyway, getting back to our first segment, I'm drinking a beer called Haze Mama from Great Lakes Brewery, which might be close to being the Treehouse of Canada along with Collective Arts, but I won't know until the great beer connoisseur from New England tries them both sometime. No. That being you.
Well, we'll have to see about that. I have a very snotty palate when it comes to the fine libations of Treehouse, Trillium, and the rest of the great
Well,
beers.
as you know, I do too when it comes to the Canadian
Well, yeah,
breweries.
there's Labatt's
Ugh,
Brood,
fuck
there's Molson
that.
X. You got all the great beers up there. You
My days
partake
of
in.
drinking that are long over, and they were over by the time I was about 18 or 19.
Okay, well, that's great. That is fantastic. Anyways, so let's talk about Second Corinth a little bit. What do you think? Want
Yeah,
some fun with that?
I think so. Yeah, it's part of the Iuka campaign, which began in late summer, early fall of 1862, and it consists of, I think, 3 different battles, and it's a very short campaign, but nonetheless still an important one in the Civil War. And at this time, the one thing to remember is there's so many moving parts, as you and I were talking about with this. So September, 17th, 1862, you have Lee being defeated at the Battle of Antietam. Prior to that, you have Second Manassas and South Mountain, which lead into Antietam. But then in the Western Theater, you also have Braxton Bragg being in, he's getting to move into Kentucky. So you have the Battle of Richmond as well. That has
all
happened.
These things going on following that Battle of Shiloh, even going back that far. And this is, after Shiloh, Pierre Gustave Toutant Beauregard, Beauregard, as we like to call him around here, Beauregard if you're nasty. He is going to retreat from Shiloh, and he's going to head right to Corinth. Corinth in Mississippi is a town northeast Mississippi. It's just below that Tennessee border. It's a very strategic and important place for a million different reasons. The most important reason is it is a major junction of 2 vital railroads, the Mobile and Ohio Railroad, as well as the Memphis and Charleston Railroad. Confederate Secretary of War Leroy Pope Walker called Corinth the vertebrae of the South, Mary. That's what he called it, is because it was a very important railway. So you had a bunch of situation where Beauregard's army is down there after Shiloh. We're going to go real quick, just kind of set this up. We're going to go back a little bit. We're going to turn back time on the Sharemobile real quick here.
If I could turn back time.
Yeah. Okay. So May 1862, there's the siege of Corinth we talked about. This is the Union trying to get the Confederates out of there for that reason, because those strategic railways. Union Major General Henry Halleck, Mary of all people. How about that? Department of Mississippi, that's where he is. At that time, he was in personal command of that army, because if you remember,
he actually did war things instead of desk things.
Well, because he was pissed at old U.S. Grant for getting all that blood spilled at Shiloh, remember? So he went in there and he was taking control of that. So he's got twice as many guys as Beauregard. He's got 120,000 dudes versus 60,000. So that's an easy math even for you to figure that one out.
We'll not talk about math after the debacle tonight with trying to get that tweet posted when I messed up the greater than sign.
Once, twice, 3 times trying to tweet.
Hey.
But Halleck is he's trying. He sieges Beauregard, and what Beauregard has to do is he has to retreat in the face of the enemy, which is the hardest thing you can probably do. He pulls out the old Quaker logs and kind of sneaks away on May 29th, May 30th, right around there of 1862. He's able to retreat, and it pisses off Jefferson Davis, because to the point where he just kind of loses confidence in him, and that's kind of what happens. So during the siege, Halleck is going to create a series of defenses that are going to become important to what we're going to talk about here in a little while. And what happened was it slowed the Union Army to get down there, but he was building these really strong fortifications, and they were very, very well built. What he would basically do is he wanted to protect the supplies that were around this railroad track. And they created this thing called the Halleck Line, which is a really strong defensive line, which is near a bunch of artillery batteries at a place called College Hill. Battery Williams, Battery Phillips, Lothrop, Tanworth, and Robinette, as well as Powell and Madison. We'll talk about a couple of them more importantly later on. But they were all very well defended with those abatis. They were very tough to get through and get around, and it's going to be important later on. What Halleck does is he's going to defend that area with about 23,000 guys. That's what he's got. So by late summer of 1862, right around that time when the Indians probably get eliminated from the playoffs in that year, right around August, right around there. Jesus. I know.
Hey, but your Sox ain't doing so good.
Hey, world champs. I'm telling you, you'll see. Anyway, so around this time, you kind of hinted at this with Bragg and those guys. The Confederates are trying to drive it in the north because they just want to kind of get in there and get the war out of the South a little bit. That campaign, the Iuka campaign you mentioned, is going to fail. It's going to fall right in its face, and it's going to ultimately leave the door open for Grant to get to Vicksburg.
Mhm.
So September 1862, Major General Sterling Price, remember him, Mary? He'd been fighting that Missouri situation, the state militia. He is now in charge of the Army of the West, and he is going to march into Iuka, Mississippi on the 14th of September. It's about 25 or 30 miles southeast of Corinth, Mississippi. And this is where the kind of orders kind of move around. There's a lot of moving parts to your point. He was ordered by his boss, Braxton Bragg, Mary, who I don't know if you know this, but the anniversary of his death was yesterday.
It was, yes.
It
I
was.
saw
So
that.
the day came and he still died.
Poor Braxy.
And Braxton Bragg was in the midst of that driving into Kentucky, which you were kind of alluding to. And what they're going to do is they want to stop the troops of the Army of the Mississippi under William Rosecrans. So Rosecrans now is in charge of his army, and what Price wants to do is he doesn't want Rosecrans from moving into Middle Tennessee
and to reinforce Nashville.
He does, right. James Negley's divisions in Nashville. They're afraid that's from the Army of the Ohio. They're afraid they're going to get the whole band together and create this really strong army. And Price, he's got 14,000 guys, and he's going to have to defend this. Now, he knows he doesn't have a lot of guys, but what he does have in his back pocket, Mary, he has a lifeline. He can still phone a friend.
Exactly.
Okay? And his friend is sitting in Holly Springs, Mississippi. And guess who that friend is?
Earl Van Dorn.
It's Earl Van Dorn. Oh, look at him from the district of the Mississippi. So
little
he
EVD.
has little EVDs.
Sounds like something you're going to pick up at the Bang Barn.
Probably is a little penicillin with the AP Hill, So they have the ability to gather a pretty strong army. When they combine, they're going to be about 22,000 guys.
Yeah.
On the Union side, U.S. Grant in the Army of the Tennessee, what he was afraid of, similarly, was Sterling Price going north to join Bragg, because Bragg was up there fighting Don Carlos Buell.
Yeah.
So they're both kind of afraid of these other guys going and connecting and strengthening up to fight the other.
It's because they've got Kentucky is a border state, as we discussed in our episode about Richmond, and it's very important that Lincoln hold on to that for that reason. And we talked about how divided that state actually is, between slaveholders and non-slaveholders. But then you have, Nashville, which is really important for the Confederacy. And I'm sure they would, like it back. And it's like, they're so afraid that they're going to go reinforce it. So they're after kind of these two, this one state and this one city are what both sides are kind of vying over right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so what Grant wants to do is he wants to make a plan. So he's going to make a plan for his left wing, under General Edward Ord. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about Ord. He'll get his day. No. It's not going to be today, but he'll have his day. Yeah. Okay. And also he's going to have him advance to Iuka. That's what he wants to do. On the other side of the other wing is Rosecrans, and he's going to be doing the same thing there, but he's going to be late. He's going to be slow. Okay.
Yeah, Grant realizes that he's not going to have time to get there to link up with Ord by the 19th.
The 19th is the day they're going to fight. They're going to meet on the 18th. They're going to do a big huddle. They're going to high five, leave and then they're going to fight on the 19th. That's their plan. But it ends up getting delayed. And this is going to lead to the Battle of Iuka. And we're just going to kind of real briefly hit it real quick. We'll do more details later on with this. But it's important to set up, especially the post-Iuka battle issues that are going to come with Rosecrans and Grant that are going to come out of it. So I suppose I'm going to talk about it, I guess, right? Whatever. So Rosecrans with Ord is going to go stop Sterling Price, right? And the battle finally gets started, and Rosecrans is going to attack. Yep. And it's just like a Friday night. He finds himself all by himself. No one's answering, right? So what's going on during
even after battle, 25 times?
25 times. 25 times. And what happens is there's an acoustic shadow that takes place.
The damn acoustic shadow.
Because the undulations and all the stuff that's going on, Ord doesn't hear the battle. So he sits around doing nothing. He's probably doing some whittling, And Grant also doesn't hear it. So it's kind of like, well, that's probably why Orr doesn't get court-martials, because he's like, I didn't hear it either. So they didn't hear the battle happening. Still, Mary, Rosecrans is able to drive Price out of Iuka. He's able to push him out. Price is going to escape down that Fulton Road. He's going to go
vacate the dance floor pretty hard.
He's going to vacate the dance floor, and he is going to ultimately hook up with Van Dorn. Well, that doesn't sound right. He meets up with Van Dorn.
That's not shocking.
No, yeah, I was going to say.
That's how the Savannah backdoor.
Yeah, I was thinking about
Price and Van Dorn
are
hooking up at the Bang Barn. What kind of Civil War story? Are we getting into Civil War Breakfast Club after dark with that?
So we're in a Peter situation here. We'll leave that alone.
Little EVD.
He is going to meet up with Earl Van Dorn, and they're going to combine their forces under Van Dorn's control, because he's got seniority, so he's going to have it. And this is going to lead to a little pissing match between William Rosecrans and U.S. Grant, where
it is
allegedly somebody, we don't know who it was, but it probably rhymes with Rosecrans, okay, goes to a Cincinnati newspaper and says, well, I had to fight by myself because I'm pretty sure that U.S. Grant was throwing back, Grandpa's old cough medicine.
Grant was into the hooch.
Anyway, you might want an Urban Dictionary that one later. By the way, okay. So he it ends up being a big political thing that's going to come out later on. So at this point, they're really not going to get along anymore after this. This is really kind of what it is. You go to the newspaper and you bash your boss. It doesn't usually end too well for you. So within a couple of days, Van Dorn's army, now with Price, they are on the march from northwest of Corinth with about 22,000 guys out of this army of West Tennessee.
Yeah. But the thing too with this is that the newspapers do praise Rosecrans after this, even though he doesn't go after Price, that's kind of foreshadowing what happens to him. This is not going to be the first time Rosecrans does this, but yeah, as you said, there's talk of rumors of Grant's drinking. We don't know who started it, but as will be seen, we'll talk about this in the aftermath. You can see that Grant is pretty pissed off about this. But yes, Price is going to advance towards, start advancing towards Corinth. But before he gets there, he is going to hook up with Van Dorn there. I said it.
All right, well.
But on this, just the number of troops that are here before we get started on this, there's 45,000 troops between the two armies, 23,000 Union and 2,200 Confederate. And they're pretty evenly matched at this. As we said, Union's commanded by General William Rosecrans, and the Confederates are commanded by Earl Van Dorn. What happens when he and Price link up is they are going to, so Earl Van Dorn has the army of West Tennessee and Price has the army of the West. Well, they're just going to become the army of West Tennessee for this whole battle. And they are going to march towards Corinth with the hope of recapturing it for the Confederacy. Since it was taken by the Union again back in the spring, as we talked about. And the Union Army has been so focused on Bragg's invasion of Kentucky that they are pretty spread out all over the place because of that. So therefore, Grant's command is scattered throughout Tennessee. And another interesting thing too, Earl Van Dorn and Rosecrans were both part of the same class at West Point in 1842, except one of them, Rosecrans, graduated near the top and the other graduated at the very bottom.
Yep. That's pretty sad right there. Kind of like Goddard High School, unfortunately, the reality of any case. So the thing about Rosecrans, from Van Dorn though, is the way he's going to march towards Corinth. He's going to kind of cut off Rosecrans from any sort of reinforcements. He's going to come down the primary road. He's going to set up just outside of Corinth. He's going to have Price's 2-division army on the left-hand side. He's going to have on the right-hand side the Department of the Mississippi, Mansfield, Lavelle. So he's going to have a pretty good sized army. To your point, Corinth has been fortified thanks to those Halleck line we talked about. With all those artillery batteries, which are pretty formidable. So you've got a strong artillery battery situation, as well as 23,000 guys all in that area. So even though they're kind of spread throughout Tennessee, that little area, they got a pretty strong little concentration. Real quick, Rosie, old Rosie, we got to talk about him, another Ohio guy, Mary. Got to talk about him, right? And he does go to West Point with Van Dorn, to your point. Also, you know, also goes to school with too is Abner Doubleday, right on the baseball team with them, and also James Longstreet. So he has got some friends in the war. So Rosecrans is going to learn of Van Dorn coming down that road, advancing from the northwest. So he's going to set up his defensive position to be ready for them. He's going to put a skirmish line up near Beauregard's old rifle pits, right, and those entrenchments. And he wants to attack the rebels. So right when they hit that Halleck line, and the reason why is it gives them the ability to fall back right into that College Hill where the artillery is if they have to. So it's really a strong two-smack attack is what it really comes down to. Now, so 10-3, 1862, around 10 o'clock in the morning, you have Thomas McKeon, the 6th Division on the left, with Charles Hamilton, the 3rd Division on the right, with David Stanley, 2nd Division in reserve.
Yeah. And the thing with this is like Earl Van Dorn, the night before on October 2nd, he had sketched out when they were camping at Chewalla, which sounds kind of like Chewbacca for some reason. That's what I thought of. They're camping at Chewalla that night. So he sketches out how he wants his army to move the next day. And apparently he was as good at art as I was, because his division commanders really don't have a clear idea of exactly what he wants to do. So he sent his cavalry to strike the railway, but he'd failed at that too because Grant had made the train like come to Jackson, Mississippi the day before, as Grant had already anticipated that the Confederates were going to try and seize that rail line. So there's Grant's forethinking right there with that. But you see, so you have EVD and his men going into this battle on October the 3rd, him having sketched a shitty drawing on a map, because I'm assuming it was that bad. If his commanders can't figure out exactly what he wants to do, that's what they're going into this battle with.
I wonder if he sticks his tongue out when he draws too. Weird.
He totally does. I'm sure he does. That's exactly what I did in art class. Yeah, that's why I didn't take art class for very long in high school, actually. But another thing to mention here, and this is something that I couldn't find a lot on, and I wish I could have. So one reason that Grant knew a little bit of what EVD wanted to do and where he was going is because he managed to intercept one of EVD's spies. And one of Earl Van Dorn's spies was a woman named Amelia Burton, apparently. And the message that she has for Earl Van Dorn gets intercepted. And because of this, like she had said in this message to Earl Van Dorn, that Rosecrans in his fortifications at Corinth, that they were weakest on the northwest side of the town. Well, Earl Van Dorn finds out that this is what's getting sent, or Rosecrans finds out this is what's getting sent to Earl Van Dorn. So he is able to, improve the town defenses in that area. Now, the thing about Amelia Burton is I found this information on American Battlefield Trust website about her. That's where I found her name. And I went and Googled her, and she is literally one of these nameless and faceless women. We just know her name. There's not much more about her. It made me think of the class that we're taking with Lisa Samia. But I just wanted to give Amelia Burton a shout out because she's another female involved in the Civil War for the Confederacy. And she's part of, her messages get intercepted, and Van Dorn's able to fortify that part of the town because of that.
She's nameless and faceless. Probably says Sheridan on her gravestone, just that one word. So, so what Van Dorn wants to do is he wants to probe the Union lines, and he's going to test them out for looking for a weak point. So he's got a plan of what he wants to do, and he wants to create what's called a double envelopment. Okay, so what he wants to do is basically what it is have two simultaneous flanking attacks hitting at the same time. It's also called a pincer, right? And to encircle the line and kind of get behind it. And this is how the initial attack is going to go. If you remember, Mary, we saw the movie Free State of Jones, right? Yep. The opening battle scene was this scene.
It was
the beginning of Corinth, okay, with Matthew McConaughey, going across the battlefield. And
he drove away in a Lincoln.
He did, but Newt Knight, he was part of the 7th Mississippi at this battle, right?
Yep.
After not to spoil the ending, but the rebels lose this battle, just so you know, okay? When they're retreating, he goes AWOL, right? The Confederates catch him, put him in jail, and they not only that, but they arrest him for desertion. They burn his entire house down.
Yeah.
So that's so he didn't like that too much. And we're studying New Night, what goes on after that. But it's just interesting he was there in that beginning scene. You've seen that movie, that really brutal battle scene at the very beginning. It's the beginning of the Battle of Second Corinth. Just little pop culture. Is what that was.
Pop culture.
Pop culture. So Van Dorn, he wants to attack McKean on the left, really from three sides, what he kind of wants to do. Because what he wants to do is he hopes if he hits McKean, the Rosecrans is going to have to move men from the right under Hamilton over to the left to strengthen that position, thus creating a weak spot for Sterling Price to burst through. That's kind of what he wants to do, kind of like that. And this is when General John MacArthur is going to get involved.
Yep, who we've seen at Missionary Ridge as well. And he gets involved in that. And sorry, I'm trying to find that in my notes. And there's a gap that ends up occurring between Davies and MacArthur.
Right. So MacArthur had been in reserve, okay, and he gets called up to move up to help move McKean. And by him moving up, he does create that gap on the Union line between McKean and Thomas Davies' 2nd Division, Illinois, Iowa, and Ohio guys for the most part. And the Rebs are going to drive that gap.
Yeah, and they go through the gap. It seemed very similar, maybe on a smaller scale, to what is going to happen at Chickamauga with Longstreet on September the 20th, where there's that gap in the line, and they're able to drive right through. And what happens is the Union Army falls back within half a mile of the redoubt, and they leave behind 2 pieces of artillery as well while they're at it. General Oglesby, the future governor of Illinois, is going to be wounded here. But then at 3 p.m., you have Hamilton, who, no word if he's related to the Alexander Hamilton, but anyway.
Explains why he could sing.
Yeah, you don't want me. I just thought of singing one of those songs, but I won't. I'll spare our listeners because they already got to hear my rendition of If I Could Turn Back Time, so won't go much further with that. But anyway, Hamilton receives the order from Rosecrans to attack, and he has his division pivot to the left. And I'm picturing that scene from Friends where the scene where they're carrying the couch and they're like, pivot, pivot, pivot. That's all I thought about. You don't know that scene.
No, I'm a big Friends guy.
But okay. Oh, sorry. I was going to say
one of the death that happens at this battle before you get too far is one of my favorite Civil War names. Mary is going to fall here, and that is Brigadier General Pleasant Hackleman, who sounds like a wonderful person, but unfortunately he's mortally wounded. He's in charge of the 1st Brigade under Davies, Illinois, Iowa, people like that, and he falls. And his name was Pleasant. Well, he didn't have a pleasant day.
He did not have a pleasant day at all. So anyway, as Hamilton is starting to fumble the football worse than, or start fumbling his attack worse than what the Patriots did in that first game they played. What?
Let it go.
Anyway, General Napoleon Buford's brigade is going to get delayed because they run into some Confederates. Interesting story about General Napoleon Buford. He is John Buford's half brother, and he had graduated in the top 7 of his class at West Point, and he actually might have been one of the reasons why John Buford later, around near this time in 1862, John Buford starts getting a little bit of a promotion, and that's why we eventually see him where we do at the Battle of Gettysburg. And it could have had something to do with his stepbrother Napoleon. Napoleon had seen a lot of success, and Buford really admired him, and they say he's one of the reasons why he went to West Point. But Hamilton just has one battery on the field, and he's got one small brigade, and they end up not really attacking at all. And because Hamilton doesn't get into place, this is why the battle's going to go on for one more day, because he can't get his shit together.
The problem is he's going to get there late. He's just going to get there late. So by the time he's ordered to attack that rebel left flank, right? And so by the time he gets in position, it's almost dark by the time his division gets there.
Well,
so
it's not till 3 o'clock he's ordered, right? And by this time of the year, it's getting dark.
So the communication issues, the plane gets off late. And the sad part about it is, if you're right, it does go to a second day, because if he could have attacked maybe even at 2 hours earlier, maybe 1 hour earlier, there's a real good chance they could have driven Van Dorn right there. They could have plowed him right off.
Exactly.
Don't forget Jeremiah Sullivan too, though, Mary. You mentioned Napoleon's Buford. He was there too.
Yeah.
But they could have easily pushed them back. Well, I say easily, but theoretically they could have. So at the end of the day, by the end of that first day, the battle for Rosecrans is a complete and utter disaster. I mean,
Mhm.
it is a mess, kind of like a broken Blizzard machine at the DQ. It's a complete and utter
That
disaster,
is
right?
the worst.
And so we gotta, we've spoken very highly of Rosecrans in the past here, Mary.
Yep.
We really, really have. Stones River specifically, but we can't really do that with this one. And
No, this one here, he's been
yeah.
driven back. What is it like? Back about half a mile, and he's not where he should be. And the Confederates really, at the end of the day, are holding the advantage. Rosecrans later, or Earl Van Dorn later said, "One more hour of daylight and victory would have soothed our grief for the loss of the gallant dead who sleep on that lost but not dishonored field." So Earl Van Dorn is looking at it as like, if we'd had more daylight. So Earl Van Dorn is using the daylight as an excuse for not carrying on, but really what it probably was the heat that day. It was 94 degrees in late September or early October, sorry. And which is probably very rare for that time of year. And also there wasn't a lot of water available for the troops, and they were exhausted because, keep in mind, they've been marching for a really, really, quite a few days at this point. So Earl Van Dorn seems to think that he could have held the field, but really he is in a great position. There is a good chance he probably thinks that the next day, oh shit, I've got this, I can take it. But the thing is Rosecrans is going to reinforce his lines for October the 4th.
He's going to have to, and we'll talk about that. But just that, Rosecrans is going to be sitting in his tent on the night of the 3rd, wearing his his Yogi Bear feety pajamas, sitting there, right, and just thinking all the mistakes he made because he didn't coordinate his attacks at all. You had, for the most part, every one of his division commanders that he had. Kind of doing their own thing. They were all kind of independent contractors. They had to be their own field general at the time. And he does reinforce the army. He puts them into that 2-mile arch that kind of goes all the way over the north of the battlefield. And so the next morning on the 4th, around 4 o'clock in the morning, the rebel artillery is going to start firing. Boom, boom, boom. And it's going to go for a couple hours until around 9 o'clock in the morning when the rebels are going to finally make their move.
Yeah. And but the Union troops are going to prepare themselves for that attack. And so what happens is, this artillery bombardment has started at 4:30 in the morning. At 7 a.m., it's Hebert who is told by Earl Van Dorn to attack. And he was to begin the engagement at daylight. And the artillery bombardment was meant to allow him to get into position. Well, at 7 a.m., Hebert tells Earl Van Dorn, "I'm too sick. I can't." So who knows? Maybe he was into the whiskey the night before or something, and that was his little sickness that he had or whatever. But who knows? Whatever was going on with him, he's not able to attack.
3 words: Corinth, Taco Bell.
Done. Always go to the DQ if you have the choice, not Taco Bell.
Exactly.
So Greene, General Martin E. Greene is going to replace Hebert, and Greene does not attack until 2 hours later. So again, you see this delay happening. So Greene takes his 4 brigades in echelon, occupies a position in the woods that is north of town, and he forms a line facing the south, and he's going to charge Battery Powell with Gates, McLean, Moore, and Colbert, and he is going to attack Hamilton's line. So Hamilton is going to be attacked, and his assault is going to be successful, and he's going to scatter the troops from Illinois and Iowa.
Yeah, they're going to be going straight on. They're going to go right at them. We talk about the strength of these batteries. Yeah. So Powell's the one that gets hit, and General Dabney Coleman, Price's 2nd Division commander, is going to be the next one who's kind of get involved in it, right? So he's going to drive his division towards the town of Corinth. Yeah. And this is where most of this battle takes place on this fort, is in front of Henry Rabinet's battery. 3 20-pound parrot guns in front of a 5-foot ditch. No thank you. And this is going to be called a Battery Rabinet, right? So the troops this is going to be really hardcore hand-to-hand combat. That's going to be
worst in the battle.
Right. Now, this is one of the most famous stories about the Second Battle of Corinth as a guy named Colonel William Rogers. Okay. Mm-hmm. This is from the Second Texas, and it's one of the more famous stories. Anybody who's been down there or studies this battle. So he led the third and final attack on Battery Robinette. Now, before the battle, he pinned a note on his chest with his name, his age, his home address, and his email address in case he fell. That's what he was going to do, right? Because he felt that he thought this could be his day. Was it a premonition? Who knows, right? So he's going to lead. He's going to lead that Second Texas, but not just the Second Texas, because he's going to have to act as a brigade commander here.
Mm-hmm.
He's also going to have to lead the 6th and the 9th Texas, as well as the 35th Mississippi and the 42nd Alabama. And they're all going to assault this Battery Robinette, okay? They're going to get within 400 yards of the battery. They're going to get to a wood line. And at the wood line, he's going to put this brigade into 4 columns. And they're going to, because they're in line up in column, all the Union guys are going to say, hey, look at those guys. They're going to call the attention upon themselves from the battery.
Yeah.
So the men YOLO it and charge the battery. And they get through the abatis and they're into the really right into the guns at this point, into the actual artillery, this vicious musket fire. There are 4 color bearers that fall. And Colonel Rogers at this point, like we see so many of these generals do, is going to grab the colors. And he's going to jump on his horseback with it. And he's going to be riding around waving the flag from his horseback. And so he's going to lead the troops while on horseback carrying this flag. Okay, this Texan. He's going to get to that 5-foot ditch in front of that battery, right?
Yeah.
And Rogers is going to jump off his horse. He's going to jump over the ditch. And he's going to plant the colors at the battery. He's going to stick them right in the ground. Claim the guns, the name of the Confederacy. Well, 13 of the 36 Union men at the battle, right at the guns, are going to be killed right here. So this is, again, that hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah.
So Rogers, for a short time, seizes Battery Robinette. He's in the guns. He has control of it. But a huge Union counterforce is going to come towards them, and is going to counterattack, and is going to drive them back. Rogers is going to try to surrender by waving his handkerchief. He sees us, goes, nope. He's going to wave his handkerchief, but the troops don't see him waving the handkerchief. Yeah. So they're going to unload canister. He's going to be hit 11 times with canister fire all at the same time. So I don't want to spoil it, but he didn't make it, right? No. So an Union Iowa soldier on Battery Robinette says, General Rogers, with a flag in one hand and a revolver in the other, led them straight into one of the most awful death traps in the entire war, he says. So you just imagine this, right? As soon as soon afterwards, Van Dorn, I want to jump ahead, but before he quits, it goes to show the tenacity of some of these guys. We talked a lot about Union guys. We talked a lot about guys like Isaac Stevens, and we talked about Chantilly, about this valor. So we don't always get a chance to talk about the Confederates, but this is a case with Rogers. We'll talk more about him in a few minutes, about how the effort he did against that battery. So it's a pretty cool story when you study it.
Yeah, no, it's very, very interesting. And there's fighting that is going to happen in the town too. And the Confederates are well within range of the Union batteries. And for instance, Lovell is in the vicinity of the Union battery Phillips, and he prepares to advance. And then the reserves come in, and around 1 o'clock, they vacate the dance floor. Earl Van Dorn starts to leave. Like, the battle is over almost as now. It started at like 4:30 in the morning, but then you have to consider, Greene is 2 hours, 7 a.m. He's 2 hours later getting started because of Hebert being sick. So 9 a.m. by 1 o'clock, it's all over. It's a relatively short battle when you think about it, but very, very fierce fighting, that is being seen at the Battery Robinette, this hand-to-hand combat, which is some of, probably the heaviest fighting in this whole battle is there. But it's interesting that as Earl Van Dorn is retreating around 1 o'clock, all of a sudden Rosecrans appears riding his lines. Mm-hmm. And this is because it's been rumored that Rosecrans has been killed. And the troops are starting to get a little bit worried. So what do you do when it's rumored you've been killed? And we've seen this in other battles before. We've even seen it with generals who haven't been rumored to have been killed. You have Beauregard at Shiloh doing it, outriding the lines to kind of rally the men. Well, Rosecrans, because it's been rumored he's been killed, he's got to make an appearance, right? So he comes on the battlefield and he's riding up and down the lines and he says, I stand in the presence of brave men and take my hat off to you. And this is all as Earl Van Dorn is starting to vacate the dance floor.
Yeah, he's going to go. We'll talk about the final part of the battle. I just want to finish up this Texan story because I know because with this. So, it's amazing when you think about the numbers of some of these too, because this is one of those regiments who really, really takes it hard. So 324 of the 2nd Texas who entered that attack, only 124 present afterwards.
Wow.
Now, these are guys who rushed a battery that was surrounded by a ditch with musketry around it. Just goes how it was. So Rogers' bravery, to go back to him again, and that 2nd Texan bravery, it drew all kinds of accolades all around the country, including from the north.
Yeah.
Rosecrans himself, before he had to show everybody he was alive again, he actually ordered Rogers' body to be buried with full military honors at Battery Robinette. He personally supervised that. There's a monument there now that was unveiled in 1912, right at Corinth. And on the monument, it's for William Rogers, it says, he was one of the bravest men that ever led a charge. Bury him with military honors, William Rosecrans. So he has a quote, a Union Major General's quote, the Army of the Cumberland Commander quote on a Confederate monument, which I always thought was pretty. I always thought that
was really cool. That's really cool.
Pretty cool story. But Rosecrans, to your point, he cost himself some valuable time by doing what he did there because he Van Dorn is going. He's taken off.
Yeah.
He's all looking for Miss Peters. He's out the door. He's gone, right?
He's gone to the bang barn.
He certainly is. And so there was an opportunity there realistically. And this is where Grant is probably a little bit unfair, right?
A little,
so Grant, he has in his quotes, he was pissed off that he let him go, that he was able to get back. But he was also pissed at Rosecrans since Iuka, and he was. So he was looking for an excuse. So he didn't pursue Van Dorn until 10-4. So on 10-3, there was an opportunity. So Grant says 2 or 3 hours of pursuit on the day of the battle without anything except what the men carried on their persons would have been worth more than any pursuit commenced the next day could have possibly been. Basically saying F you is what that really, really was.
Exactly.
But you know what's funny about this? What happens to Rosecrans as soon as this battle ends? Guess what he is? He's a hero.
He is. He's a complete hero. And before we get to that, just to kind of wrap up, Battle of Corinth. So the total casualties are 7,197, 2,359 are Union, and 4,838 are Confederate. Just to get into what Rosecrans does, what happens on October the 5th, when he finally does decide to start a bit of a pursue of Earl Van Dorn. So General Ord makes an appearance again. He's been making his way to reinforce Rosecrans at Corinth. The night of October the 4th, he's camped near Pocahontas, Tennessee. And a division of Illinois and Indiana regiments under the command of General Stephen A. Hurlbut discovered Confederates in their front. This is Earl Van Dorn and Price retreating. So Ord takes command of this, and he starts to push Earl Van Dorn's advance of and Price's army back 5 miles to Hatchie River and across the Davis Bridge. During the fight, Ord is wounded, and Hurlbut has to assume command. So as the fighting is happening, some of Earl Van Dorn's scouts find another crossing south of Crum, and it's south at a place called Crumb's Mill. From here, Earl Van Dorn is going to lead his army back to Mississippi. So while Battle of Corinth and the battle, as well as you can say the Battle of Davis Bridge, although it's a small one, are both Union victories, but this is not what Grant wanted. Grant wanted Rosecrans to get Earl Van Dorn and completely crush him so that he can't go back. He doesn't want him to go back. And as you said, Grant is just pissed because, the soldiers could have just taken what they had on the 4th, and, Grant saying they could have caught Earl Van Dorn. And I do, personally, I think that's a little bit unfair because it's like these men have been fighting in the heat for 2 days. and Grant's just expecting them to like haul ass and go after Van Dorn's army. Now Rosecrans made his own
Oh, you know
errors
what?
too.
That was. I mean, Rosecrans in the Northern Press was a hero for this battle. Okay,
Exactly, he
he was
was.
promoted, and what that was by Grant, that was throwing cold water on that. Is what that was. There's no
Yeah,
question it was.
exactly.
You
He
know,
was
he's
trying,
gonna.
and you see Grant do this to Rosecrans again at Stones River, was saying that it wasn't a victory. So this is kind of a pattern with these two. And I think when you're looking at the relationship between Grant and Rosecrans and just all the kind of, it seems pretty dramatic. Like it's almost like Mean Girls. Reminds me of some of the shit I went through in high school, actually. It goes back to Iuka with these rumors about drinking.
It
And
does.
what happened is when Rosecrans started going after Van Dorn on the 5th to try and hook up with Ord where he was, apparently he went the wrong way. And Grant says in his memoirs, that he went on the wrong road. And then he said, even when he did start, if Rosecrans had followed the route taken by the enemy, he would have come up upon Van Dorn in a swamp with a stream in front and Ord holding the only bridge. But Rosecrans took the road leading north and towards Chewala instead of west. So, there we go. He went the wrong way. Like he's basically,
Yeah.
you know, just, I don't know. It's interesting, the relationship between the two of them. I get the criticism on both sides, but I think Grant might be a little bit harsh towards Rosecrans considering the hard fighting the troops go through at Battle of Corinth.
Well, when you see these later battles, these guys are involved in together, Vicksburg
Yeah.
and Chattanooga. You can see where the foundation's laid for this and why it is. But the ironic thing about it is he does get promoted. He replaces Don Carlos Buell as the Army of the Ohio, which will
He
become
does.
the Army of the Cumberland. So he does get
Yeah.
promoted. Van Dorn, on the other hand, Mary, not so much. He's going to get his ass fired. So
Yeah.
he's going to get fired and replaced by John C. Pemberton due to the loss of all that slaughter at Corinth. So he's going to get
Yep.
bumped. Also, there was that persistent, always rumor that he must have been drunk. So
Yeah, there was
that
like Earl Van Dorn has this same rumor that he's drunk. The interesting thing about Rosecrans being promoted is Grant was quite happy about it because he said, I was delighted at the promotion of General Rosecrans to a separate command because I still believe that when independent of an immediate superior, aka myself, Grant, the qualities which at the time I credited him with possessing would show themselves. As a subordinate, I found that I could make him, he would not do as I wished and had determined to relieve him from duty that very day. So Grant is very like, you can see he's pissed at these rumors about the drinking. And I mean, who wouldn't be, right? Like with what happened after Iuka, whether it was Rosecrans, we're not 100% sure, but it most likely was, telling the newspapers that Grant was drunk, and Rosecrans is like, and I was fighting by myself, you know. But Grant said of Corinth, the battle was recognized by me as being a decided victory, though not so complete as I had hoped for nearly so complete as I now think that was within the easy grasp of the commanding officer at Corinth. So he's getting that last bit of shade in there, which, I mean, I kind of just laughed when I read that because I'm like, holy shit, he is not happy about the drinking rumors, which again, who can blame him, right? And just to say to our listeners, we're not trying to shit all over Grant here and defend Rosecrans, but there is a definite, there's a lot of background to this relationship they have that goes back to Iuka, and you can see it carry through right to when Rosecrans leaves Chattanooga in 1863, in late 1863.
Well, they were definitely rivals. They had, and it wasn't just, there's a reason why Rosecrans went to that Cincinnati Reporter and planted that story. I mean,
absolutely.
it wasn't always just Grant coming at Rosecrans. I mean, Rosecrans was
exactly.
He's not coming where he's smelling rosy either. If you see what I just did right
there. Exactly. So, they're both doing they are both doing the Mean Girls thing with this. They're not doing either of themselves or each other any favors with this, but it's just interesting, like all this, it's not just battles that are happening, it's these rivalries as well behind the scenes that are almost just as interesting, that are playing into maybe how commands are going to change later in the Civil War. But you can see that Grant does have a bit of respect. He does have the respect for Rosecrans, saying he possessed qualities that made him a good commander, and Grant, I think, much preferred him where he was being in charge of what will become the Army of the Cumberland, which is eventually going to go on to Stones River, and eventually to Chickamauga as well.
Go on and on and on. So I think, but again, these people are people. They're they're in the heat of battle, literally and figuratively. So you can see how, especially with the eyes of Washington and Halleck, right, looking especially on Grant, because he already knew that he was already in the doghouse from Shiloh. He already knew Halleck was already had a couple strikes on him. So of course he's going to be sensitive to rumors that maybe he put the army at risk by ignoring Rosecrans and Iuka and potentially get them all destroyed. So you can see how that would have gone and how dangerous that was for a rumor at the time for Grant. So you can see his anger. You really, really can.
Oh, I can completely understand it, especially what happened to him at Shiloh. And then you have the newspapers and the media rearing their ugly head again, with probably Rosecrans going to that the reporter in Cincinnati and saying, "Oh yeah, I was on my own, and I think Grant might have been drunk again." You can see why that wound was still open from what Halleck had did to him post Shiloh, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question about it. But an interesting story, because certainly Second Corinth is one of those battles that doesn't really get much press. I think for the average Civil War person, you mentioned Corinth, you think of the siege, right?
Yeah, you think of Beauregard and all that.
Beauregard and all those guys and driving them off. This is an important battle because the Union was able to get control of that rail line again. Right. Yeah. They were able to really take control of those two vital railroad junctions. And what this really did was it helped open the doors towards Vicksburg. It helped take a lot of soldiers off the dance floor on the Confederate side. So it all plays in part and parcel to the bigger things that lead to bigger battles in that theater. And without Second Corinth, if the Confederates would have got back in there and held that, it's interesting how that might have played out for later battles.
Yeah, would there have been a Stones River? Had Corinth been held by the Confederates?
That's tough to say. It's tough to say. One all leads to the other. That's what's great about it. It's like a bunch of dominoes falling, but if one doesn't go the right way, it screws up the whole thing. So anyway, so what's next?
We are going to be staying in the Western Theater, and we're going to be talking Perryville. So we are going to be where we started with Richmond, Kentucky a few weeks ago. We are going to be wrapping up that discussion of that particular campaign. And then the other thing I want to mention is, like, tonight I'm at Carton House, obviously, Battle of Franklin. And we mentioned this at the beginning, but we are doing a fundraiser with Homebrew History podcast with Joe and Bo over there. And if you haven't yet, check out their podcast because it's pretty awesome. So how the fundraiser works is just go on to Battle of Franklin Trust website and go to the donate page, and they have a PayPal on there. And we have a really great gift basket that has been put together with lots of cool Civil War nerdy stuff in it. Thanks to Joe for putting that together. And for every $5 you donate, you get entered into a raffle to win that gift basket. But also more than that, you're going to be contributing to battlefield preservation for Battle of Franklin Trust as well. So that's pretty cool. We will be having our next roundtable the third Wednesday in October, which will probably be a good time. Our last one was a great time too with trivia. We won't be doing trivia this time, just regular roundtable, but you can come nerd out with us if you want. So I think that's it for tonight. So that was a great discussion about the Second Battle of Corinth. So thank you to you, Darren, for bringing it as you always do.
Well, yeah, just having part of the team. You know how it is. Like, I got a t-shirt now, so I'm official. Yeah, same with you. All right, so off we go to Perryville, which I'm sure we'll talk with old friend William Lytle again. He'll make his appearance there as well. I'm sure we'll be mentioning him again. But some good things coming down the road. By the time this drops, we'll have our book club with Kate. That's going to be fantastic. And we'll have another live. And we'll look forward to a fantastic, hopefully good weekends. So, Mary, any final words from you?
Well, thank you as always for bringing it. And thanks to our listeners for supporting us for these last 58 episodes. It's been quite a journey, and I can honestly say I've learned a lot along the way about the Civil War and all that. And, just everybody stay safe and keep having fun. And we'll see you on our live on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. So,
and don't make sure you donate. Don't forget Homebrew History. They're great buffed fundraisers. So we know who's not kicking in money. So we see you. Santa's making a list. So
It's only
no, but
$5. So every $5
$5.
you donate, you get entered into a raffle to win a really great gift basket, which has
Yeah,
some
it's a great.
Civil War Breakfast Club swag in it too.
Oh, I
So
know. It's got a great cause, great cause.
yeah.
All right. So, Mary, again, the pleasure, all yours, and hope you have a great night. And we look forward to talking to everyone on the other side and down the road. So, peace out to you.
See y'all later.
Adios.
Bye.